Hello and welcome back to Crafty Thursday. I'm here with Jennie, and today we're going to try to finish something, I think. But, you know, sometimes minis take longer than you think they're going to take. This Crafty Thursday is sponsored by my patrons on Patreon. You can join us on patreon.com/BillAllanWorld to have exclusive access to my exclusive content that I make exclusively for patrons, and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's lots of tiers. Go check it out. So, Jennie, you are working on none other than Captain Aki, the Dragonborn Paladin, and Captain of the Mukadas Jangchilar.
Yes.
Let me move my stupid elementals out of the way. And Captain Aki looking good. Those base colors coming through, that highlight coat on the cape, a lot of depth there. Really nice. So what are you going to work on today?
So today it's mostly, like most of his flat coats are done. He still needs eyes, so we're going to give him eyes. And then I'm going to play around partially with shadows in some of these areas, like shadow and highlighting, and even maybe some nice little accent marks in certain spots. We'll see what we can do.
Now, I've been working on Trizzle for what seems like a ridiculously god-awful amount of time, and because I suck, it takes longer. So, last time I actually hit Trizzle with some highlights, which I sort of like, but then I realized as I was hitting the highlights, sometimes when you hit those highlights, it brings out flaws. So now I need to go back and touch up some areas. I need to add some shadows along Trizzle's jacket, like along the shadowy areas inside, and I'm gonna recoat his red coat, and I'm gonna try to do it carefully, like a wash, to create some depth in some of those folds, because the highlight coat was good, but it kind of washed out his coat overall, and I want his coat to be very lush and red and rich in color. And if I can get through all that, I'm going to touch up the brown on his pants to make that a little warmer and a little more vibrant. So we'll see. We'll see how far I get with that. I do say that I like his shirt. I added the highlight on his shirt. So now it's blue. It's still very regal, but the shirt has some highlights on it, which I do like. So to do that brown, I'm going to go with the leather brown from your War Paints line. Shake it, shake it, shake it up, shake it up. No, the painter's gonna paint, 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 and the player's gonna play, 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 but I'm just gonna shake, 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 shake the paint, shake the paint. Copyright. All right, Jennie, a little bit of that on the wet palette. Boop, beep.
It's not really wet anymore.
It's sort of damp. Mildly? No, not at all.
Probably like the tiniest bit.
Just enough to keep the paint from blobbing. Good enough for me. All right, Trizzle. Going in for a deep dive. Gonna trizz these boots. These boots were made for Trizzle. And that's just what they're doing. One of these days, these Trizzle boots are gonna walk all over you. Doom, 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 doom. You keep saying.
It also occurred to me when I was thinking about like the right mindset for mini painting, is that
Preach it, sister. Tell them. Tell them.
Often, a lot of players, the easiest time when they get discouraged is when they, kind of like the problem you're having with Trizzle, is when they keep doing the same thing and it's not just going right, and they're like, oh, this is like, this is like me failing. They just can't get it. But that's really like, no matter who you are, that's just part of the experience.
Yes.
Like a great quote that I don't know who said it, probably Bob Ross. He's like, the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried.
Yes.
Think about that.
That's, Jennie, thank you. That is the quote of the day, people. If you're watching, write that down. That should be your mantra. And I don't mean a tiefling paladin. I mean your belief system. And I think, Jennie, as we're speaking of this topic, I noticed that I have some red accidentally on his brown gloves. But as we're speaking of this topic, Jenny, I can think of no better thing to reinforce that because you're absolutely right. And I think that could apply not just to mini painting, but dare I say, to the art of role-playing and of DMing.
Yep.
I think that I have been playing games for so long that sometimes I take for granted the vast quantity of knowledge that I've amassed in over 40 years. And I have failed many times. As a player, I've had more characters die than live. Wrap that up in your burritos and eat it, my friends.
And that's the fun part of, things like this where you're just, it's not too serious, whether, DMing, painting minis, playing games, is the fun is in the failure. Some people do, it's upsetting at first in the moment when a character dies or your campaign's not going like how you wanted it to go. But at the end of the day, those are the experiences you look back on and you build from.
Truths and truths. Truths with a small lowercase t and truths. I will say that this sculpt is a very complex one, which makes my entire job more difficult. But when it's finally done, this is going to pay off in vast sums. Man, ever so much detail. Ever so much. Ever so carefully. Whispering. Okay, brown touch-ups are complete. This brush is getting washed out, y'all. Gonna wash this brush out and just gonna take a look at the next range of colors because I need to somehow kind of create a sort of a rich red wash, but I don't want it dripping all over everything. That is cruciality. It must not drip. So I'm gonna dig into the big box of paints. Yes. Gonna dig into the big box of paints. Dig into the big box of paints. Those are very vivid colors. I'm looking for a darker red. Now, I have glistening blood, which is an effect. I don't want his jacket to look like blood, and I don't want it to glisten. I want it to look like red velvet. So I wonder if I do a dark tone. Is that too dark as a wash, or should I do a soft tone?
I think I would go with soft tone because if your wash gets too dark, it's going to start looking like a brown.
Okay, which I don't want. No, sir, I don't want it. There's a crusted sore. Imagine that. A paint color called crusted sore.
That's gross.
There's dragon red. I wonder if that's darker than pure red. Looks like it. So what I'm going to do is just some touch-ups on Trizzle's red jacket with this dragon red. And then let that dry. See if I need to do touch-ups. And then, depending on how that looks, oof. So I'm kind of hitting the low points, like around the belt, in the creases. Do you always try to paint in one direction? How do you determine what direction to paint in?
I like to stay with the flow of the area I'm going. That usually works best to keep, so even if you get strokes in it, it looks like part of the texture. So like certain areas, you just kind of have to wing it. Like if, you kind of have a large shield and it's not really going in any direction, but like if you're painting the torso, usually it goes straight up and down with the plate meal. Or like straight down to the plate meal. Or if you're painting a cape, you just kind of go down the length of it. So that also, usually where you start will be more of a solid color and where you end might get a little more streaky. And that'll help it be consistent. You usually want the streaky part where the end of it would be.
That makes sense. I like that philosophy. Sometimes I find myself struggling with the direction to paint in when there's like a lot of texture on a sculpt for a mini.
Yeah. That's one of the kind of wing it moments where you just sort of see what looks nice. Usually you just like go with the area around it. And if you really paint it and it just looks dumb and streaky, then you go with another direction.
Good advice. So when I did the dry brush, the highlight coat, I might have overdone some of these spots. So what I'm doing now is kind of going back under the arms to try to add in some red, to bring some red back, to make it a little richer, kind of where the natural shadows would be. But I'm still leaving some of those dry brush spots. And I'm liking what I'm doing here.
And like this is what I had also mentioned from a previous episode, that when we're working on these figures in a different day after we've had some chance to not look at them, then you get more time to kind of see, okay, do I like that? Do I not like it?
Absolutely.
Plus, it's better to notice flaws in your paint job the day after you paint it, rather than when you seal it all at the same time and then you notice it once you put it down on the table.
I am becoming so happy with this overcoat of a slightly darker red. It's really starting to come out, like the texture.
It's looking very consistent.
And I don't want to overdo it, so I'm going to stop there. But because I don't like wasting colors, I'm going to use up this dummy dumb red and paint some more crystals on these elementals. So what are you working on now?
Right now, I'm just taking a look at it because I was starting some of my shading, because I have every area of it now has a flat color. So this is like a preview, like you can see on his cape, on there, they all have flat colors. And I think there are areas where I could do like a manual shading with other shades of like silver or gold, but because it's a metallic tone, I don't want to take the shine away by putting a more like matte cover coat on it. So I think I'm just gonna use the soft tone after, but I think I also had a good idea for a detail that I could do.
Okay.
That'd be neat.
What detail might that be?
I was gonna try to see if I put if I could like put a holy symbol on the shield, which I think I can do. And again, it's one of those things that you kind of do at the end, where if I really don't like it, I can always just put silver over it again and it'll be gone. So
True that. So, it's amazing how little paint goes such a long way when you're doing minis.
Yeah. It always takes a little time too to really figure out how much you're needing. In general with paint, it's a good idea to start with less and go with more, because you can always, refill your palette, but if you poured out too much paint, there's not a lot, you can't put it back, so.
Right, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And again, if I don't like how this red paint looks on the crystals that are bursting forth from the ground around my elemental, I could just get rid of it later. And paint over it.
That's the fun thing about mini painting, is nothing is really ever that permanent. You could always repaint a whole figure if you want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that there are techniques for doing that, like for stripping off paint. Our very own friend DoD Spec Ops sent me a list of instructions for how to do just that, which basically involved bathing the mini in question in a solution that strips the paint off without completely destroying the sculpt. Okay, I have used up my Dum Dum Red and added a couple more gems to the Elemental Brothers. Just as an update, see, here's what I did. So on this last episode, I hit the Elemental Brother, this one, with a white highlight coat, and you can see how that really brings out the rocky texture, but I'm far from done. Like, I really want to go in and individually paint some of his scales and stones with different earth tones to kind of warm it up. Maybe some browns, maybe some beiges, and maybe even a few like kind of sparkly metal, mineral kind of looks. In unrelated news, there's Eddie Maiden. After the repaint, I got his white t-shirt, I got his pants, I got a highlight coat on that. I redid his hair and his skin. Now, I haven't decided if I want to do kind of a greenish wash on his face and skin to give him a little more of a zombie look. So I'm just stewing on that, because like you said, sometimes you got to step away from it to take a look. Yep. I could do a soft tone wash, see what that looks like. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's a thing I'll do. It is always a little more difficult to get red out of a brush. It's just like the pigment or something.
Yeah, it's a really strong pigment.
Takes a little more out.
Because to achieve like a true red, you have to use a lot more of the original dye than like a blue or a yellow.
Pigments. Okay, so trizzle. I have avoided Trizzle's facial features this entire time because I'm afraid of painting faces, because they're hard. I'm liking the jacket, I'm liking the shirt, I'm liking the boots. I might have to do some touch-ups on the trim of the jacket. But overall, coming together. So, do I want to go with a darker color for the trim on the jacket? Right now it's kind of a muted brown. Do I want to go with like a black trim?
You could make it, because right now it's about the same tone as the pants and boots. Which it is pretty heavy on brown.
Yeah. I think I want to do something with that. I think I'm gonna do that. Let's see, but I don't know if I want just basic black matte.
You could do the Necromancer black. It's kind of grayish.
Ooh, that could work. There's uniform gray, dark stone, necrotic flesh, ugh, ash gray, mummy robes, I don't know. Uniform gray looks pretty dark. Maybe if I mix a tiny bit of black into that?
Yeah, here's...
Or should I use the Necromancer cloak?
Yeah, because Necromancer...
Is the Necromancer cloak's definitely darker? That's what I'll do. Sorry, Uniform Gray, your time will come. Maybe some other time when I'm working on the elementals. But for now, Jennie wins. Necromancer cloak. Okay, Jennie. This brush is too big. Too big. This brush is maybe too big. Oh, I need the finest possible point.
This one's really small.
Yeah, that's good. This, the tip of this brush sucks. That's the only problem. I need like less than 0 for the point that I'm trying to get, because every time I go to do eyes, I choke.
That's an important part of painting minis, as it literally does not matter the quality of the mini or paint you use if you're using a bad brush.
Valid and extremely important.
And like I said, some people do use toothpicks, and toothpicks aren't inherently bad, but even with a toothpick, you won't get as fine of a tip as a fine tip brush because you don't have the fibers of the brush hair to hold in some of that paint and stabilize it.
Okay. So far, so good. I'm hitting Trizzle in the pants with the Necromancer robe black color. Necromancer robe color, which is kind of a thin paint, actually. It's sort of grayish. Man, this is hard. This is harder than I thought it would ever be. Not gonna lie. Breathe, Bill, breathe. Breathe. Breathe, Bill.
So something that I like to do when I paint minis, just because I have a little more like artistic steadiness with it, and you can try at home too if you want to sort of challenge yourself, or if you've got the basics down. Not drop your mini, but if you see on the shield that I've started doing these accent marks, and they're not part of the actual like sculpt of it, but I do imagine like a shield or a cloak is often a holy symbol, where you would have like an illustration that isn't necessarily raised on a figure anyways. So if you have a little more artistic zeal, it's a fun thing to try out. And especially too for your paladins and clerics, a holy symbol is always important.
Yep, and as always, if it doesn't work out, you can
paint over it.
Paint over it.
I had a really fun mini that I did before that it was mine, so I didn't care if I made it look bad. So I, like it was my character, and we used like homebrew gods or whatever. Like we were really just going crazy with it. So we're using like homebrew gods and like bases, and it was like a god of luck and fortune.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, Jordan, I want to use a god of luck or fortune. And she was like, okay. The holy symbol is a 4-leaf clover, and the colors are like purple, mint green, and gold. And I ended up just going really crazy with it, where I had like the mint green, 4-leaf clover, and then like along the shield I had like suit of cards, and it looks a little, I guess, showy for a paladin, but it's really fun to look at. It was fun to paint.
And there you have it.
But even that one, I had to redo like the accent marks on that one a good couple of times and repaint over it.
Indeed. Every layer of paint, even if I end up not liking it, adds more realism to the sky.
That's true.
Without a doubt. Now, because I don't like to waste paint, I'm going to use up the rest of this gray on this dumb little treasure bag that's on the bottom of the base. Which I will then go over later with some other beige for highlights. But just going to get a little paint on there just to get things going. Wow. And just like the highlights, I'm kind of going back over the lowlights too. The shadows.
Yeah.
Because when I highlighted, I kind of went a little bit crazy. So I'm going back, dipping back underneath like where his robe ends and dulling that down with some more of this gray. Okay, we're getting there. Tricky Troy has waited like a year. I should have just sent this to DoD. No. You know what? I'm glad. I'm glad that this is working out. It's taken a while, but it's working out. Is this metal?
That's Necromancer.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Good. I'm going to use your extra Necromancer then. Because while Trizzy is drying, I'm going to borrow some of this here Necromancer and do some more of them stones on my elementals.
Those are a really good mini to have on hand for extra paint because they have a lot of neat colors on there.
Yeah. And who's to say what kind of crystals and stones burst from the ground when an elemental appears? No one. So it can look stupid. Such as the pinkish crystals that I painted earlier when I had leftover paint that look basically like bubblegum rocks. Or it can look however you want it to look. But I'm just using up paint, so it don't really matter. And this gray works just fine.
Usually people don't look at like a monster's NPC as finely as they would a character's, but it's still nice to put the work into it and put the detail, especially if it's like a big special guy.
Yeah. Anytime I think you have a boss mob, you have the potential for something really cool. And I'm not a diorama kind of person. I like practical terrain crafting that you can use and reuse. That's, got some modularity to it.
Because for a lot of people, storage is one of their biggest problems with their hobbies, so you can't fill a whole basement or room with.
Not everybody has 3 shelving units worth of space at their job to store all of their worldly possessions because their wife won't let them put them at home. Wait, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? ASMR.
Subtlety.
Yes, subtlety. All right, I'm going to use this big dum-dum brush, this cheap,
Oh my
like,
God,
Crayola one.
The shield kind of looks like a butterfly wing now.
Does
but
it?
I like it. Look.
Yes, it does, but that's gorgeous. Show the Carafa cam.
Carafa, look. It looks like a butterfly wing, but it's supposed to be, because yesterday when me and Bill talked, we said that the Mukata Strangulaar have like a cup as their holy symbol, so he has a cup on the front of him. So that's why I did a little illustration where the very bottom you can see the chalice and like there's just little watery splashes going up. And especially for like a captain of the guard kind of guy, that's on point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy I took the time to do that.
Me too. While I'm here, I'm just gonna dab a little bit of black in with a little bit of white and mix it on my dry palette over here to get some gray. And then I'm going to wash off most of that paint, and then I'm going to hit this elemental with a dry coat. Here, I'll face him down so everybody can see. Can you all see that? Ready? Here we go. It's like magic. I go against the grain when I'm painting a dry coat. A dry brush coat is meant to catch the highlights, so I'm getting everything that sticks out. And it really truly is like a magic trick. Load up some more paint and then simultaneously wash it off. I'm gonna get his crown and his face. Oh, that's glorious. Sloppy, messy, glorious dry brush coat.
It's nice. It's very realistic.
Yes, I think this is the easiest kind of mini for me, the big kind.
See, I tend to have trouble with some of the larger minis, but I think that's just because I am highly detail oriented, and as such, like, I work best small, but when it gets to like a larger one, like that size is manageable, but especially like, oh, time to paint a dragon, I can't. I have a hard time.
So if you look, it's funny because like this guy I based in like a greenish brown, and this guy I based in black. This guy I hit with a straight white highlight, and this guy is just a gray highlight. So they're two very different looking things, even though they're exactly the same sculpt. Precisely exactly the same sculpt. Now, that dummy brush is going to get dried out, and this good brush is going to get pointed. Taste the poison.
At least people don't still use lead-based paints. So you know what? You're all right.
They don't? Too bad. I think there's something to be said for lead-based paints. Imagine art that could kill people. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so, Jenny, are you still using that blue? Maybe?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna steal it because I like to recycle paints. This crystal is begging to be blue, or it's gonna suck.
That's fun. Oh my god. Okay, I remembered. Sometimes I just literally forget where I am on the figure.
I am digging this, buddy.
Get his little hair quills.
Blue crystal. Like that.
They have crystals pertaining to all the gods because they're just like elemental.
They're so elemental. Okay, we're going to do some finishing touches before we wrap yet another episode of Crafty Thursday.
I I think all I need to do now is like the soft tone, probably.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought 3 episodes ago. And here we are, still working on Trizzle.
Yup.
All right, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Crafty Thursday, wherein Jennie and I tried to paint things. We will check back in with you next week, and maybe we'll be done. And we'll start on the next crafty project. Maybe we won't. But please consider subscribing, liking, and clicking on the notifications bell so that you will be alerted to when our next videos show up. And as always, leave your own comments and expert tips on how to paint minis, craft terrain, and the such.
Tips and tricks.
Yeah, tips and tricks. Because our community loves sharing, and we have a vibrant and active community of people who like to talk about things and share ideas. And pretty much everybody's friendly, because if they're not, I ban them.
Oh.
Okay, peace out, see ya, love you, bye.